We got a new United States Supreme Court ruling in. It's breaking news, and it's not pretty. They just gave another win to Donald Trump on his deportation plan. 500,000 people who are from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, who were here not illegally, not undocumented, but documented, given temporary protective status, having the guardian wing of America protect them, pursuant to Joe Biden's Homeland Security, to allow them to stay here with a sponsor, to work, to try to get legal status or asylum while they're in the United States because their countries are war-torn, because they're economically unstable, because they could be killed in their countries. They're all now going to be immediately deported because the United States Supreme Court just gave Donald Trump a win. And if you're a part, and not only the people that are the hyphenated Americans of those communities, the Cuban Americans, the Haitian Americans, Nicaraguan Americans, Venezuelan Americans, all fair-minded people should be up in arms about what just got decided by the Supreme Court. Apparently 7-2 with Ketanji Brown Jackson in a stinging rebuke in her dissent. I'm going to read from because I think that's going to resonate in history. But those communities, to the extent that you supported Donald Trump, we're not talking about criminals being now immediately deported back to their countries. These were hard-working people here on a documented way through temporary protective status that checked in through it. They're only called parolees. I know MAGA loves talking about them like they're prisoners on parole. They're not on parole. Parole is another way of saying that they're in the immigration system and they've been let out to work in America with proper papers while they apply for citizenship, green card, asylum, or other permanent or temporary status. That's what it means. That's what these people are doing. And they all have sponsors and they're all hardworking and they're all paying taxes and they wanted to stay here. But Donald Trump, to score cheap political points, decided to get rid of them. So if you're in those communities, you're not 1 degree separated from these people. You're a quarter of a degree. These are your aunts, your uncles, your nephews, your cousins, your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers. That's who's just got, let's put a human face on that. That's who just got nailed by the Supreme Court and by Donald Trump. And if you don't remember that at the midterms, shame on you. How many shame on yous do we have to do with Donald Trump? As Antonin Scalia once said, a justice in the 1980s, sometimes the wolf doesn't come in sheep's clothing. Sometimes the wolf comes as a wolf. We've got a wolf in the White House. He says and does exactly what he's going to do and does it. And the Supreme Court backs him up because he's got the numbers. Because the last time around, he packed the court with Amy Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, who joined Alito and Thomas to join this unholy group that makes rulings that you and I then have to pick up the pieces behind and say to ourselves, is this the America that I was born in, that I got naturalized in, that I love? Or is it something else entirely? Is this a cryptocurrency-fueled kleptocracy? A one that is godless, that is ferocious, that is not patriotic? That is what we're watching. Let me read to you. Here on Legal AF, did I mention I'm on Legal AF? This is Michael Popok. Do I have to still say my name? I think I do. Take a moment if you like this kind of content, this unvarnished, would just completely destroy the spin type commentary and opinion here. Hit the subscribe button. It helps. Let me read to you from Ketanji Brown Jackson's statement. I'm fired up this morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to apologize for it. I think it's important. The silent majority time is over. We don't have that privilege any longer. It's time to speak out. Here's what Ketanji Brown Jackson said in her speaking out. She first said, how did the court even grant a stay? Let's go over the mechanics. The trial judge in Massachusetts sides against the Trump administration and says they cannot deport everyone and end temporary protective status in one fell swoop en masse without individual case assessment. That's arbitrary and capricious. And there's even an argument that under the Supreme Court, that under the statute, that one Homeland Security secretary like Kristi Noem can't undo what was already decided by the prior one, because the economics and the political instability and the violence in those countries hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is an election. And so the trial judge agreed with that. The First Department agreed with that. Donald Trump went for a stay at the First Department. in order to allow him to continue to deport all these people, 500,000 of them, during the process of the appeal, and it was denied. And then it goes to the Supreme Court, and they have to apply what's called the Niken factors, Nken. It's based on a case from 2009, and the court has to look at whether, kind of peek under the hood and say, is there a fair chance that the other side, the Trump administration, is going to win on the merits? And they said yes. And then they had to look at irreparable harm. And they said, well, who's going to be irreparably harmed? Well, the government, apparently, more than these individuals being uprooted and divided from their families. And Ketanji Brown Jackson said, what? That is not irreparable harm. You've botched the analysis under these factors. You should never have granted the stay. Now, interestingly enough, she was joined by Sotomayor, but it looks to be at least a 7-2 decision. Maybe Kagan siding with the majority, which I can't quite understand. Here's what Justice Jackson wrote on page 2. The court has plainly botched this assessment today. The assessment of the factors about whether there should be a stay, which effectively gives Donald Trump the win and allows him to deport these people now. What is he going to do? Bring him back if he loses? I don't think so. It requires next to nothing from the government, she writes, with respect to irreparable harm, and it undervalues the devastating consequences of allowing the government to precipitously upend the lives and livelihoods of nearly 500,000 non-citizens while their legal claims are pending. Remember, these people have temporary protective status, or they had it. They have a sponsor, they're working, they're not undocumented. They're human beings that wanted to live the American dream. She says, I would have denied the government's application because its harm-related showing is patently insufficient. Nearly 500,000 Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan non-citizens are presently in the United States, says Justice Jackson, after fleeing their home countries by virtue of temporary permission granted to them by the last Department of Homeland Security under Biden. Parole is discretionary by statute. The Homeland Security awards parole status through a competitive and detailed application process that's rigorous, individualized assessment of the application circumstances. Well, they didn't use any of that in getting rid of these people. Your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers, your employees. They just en masse deported them. And the Supreme Court was okay with it. And I don't even know why. Because it's an emergency application on a shadow docket, on a short fuse with skeletal briefing and no oral argument and no real written opinion. I got a paragraph that just says we grant the stay. And then a dissent that goes on for 8 pages. This is no way to run a constitutional republic or our justice system. And Justice Jackson reminds everyone that since the First Circuit made the decision to deny the stay in the first place, then the Supreme Court has to find extraordinary circumstances to disturb that decision, which apparently they found. What I want you to do is focus on the result. Elections matter. This midterm election matters. And if you want to run the bastards out on a rail, and you want to hold them accountable, and you don't like what just happened to you, your family, your neighbors, your colleagues, you don't have to be in those communities to find it appalling that it just happened. Then vote with your feet, vote with your hands, vote in the ballot box. If you give back the Senate and the House to the Democrats, we will start some semblance of checks and balance. If you leave it the way it is now, Donald Trump is not only going to be winning now, he's going to be winning along with his henchmen for the next 20 years because he's going to gain control of the federal courts. He's going to have 400 federal judges that he's going to be able to appoint, but not if he doesn't have the Senate, you see? That's the call to action here on this hot take. I'm going to continue to follow it. I'm at the intersection of law and politics. I report here on Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Join us there. That's the clearinghouse. That is the one-stop shopping for all things law and politics. We got a dozen contributors, and we've got 3 or 4 podcasts, all in collaboration with Midas Touch on Legal AF. We got a Substack too. You want more information, more data. You want to read the Supreme Court decision for yourself? It's up on our Legal AF Substack under SCOTUS AF, and a morning briefing for me every day called Morning AF. What else? So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. I'm Michael Popak, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popak Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popak Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popak Firm today at 1-877-POPAK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopakfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popak Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.